Welcome back, CSC 121, to the exciting conclusion, part 2 of 3 address. Our exercise that we're working on where we're doing output, and we're outputting 3-line addresses, and we're going to use the input function now. Now, one place to check out the input function, you'll see it in your How to Think Like a Computer Scientist interactive edition book reading and other reading, but you'll also see it here. If you go down to the bottom here, Python user input, it's at the bottom like it's really advanced, but it's not. Some of you have used it already in some of your exercises. But if you come here to user input, it runs a built-in function called input, which prompts a user for information, to data to put in there. And now obviously doing that makes it a little more interactive, not super exciting yet. So I'm going to go back here and use this input function. Now we already have our variables. The whole idea with an input function, which makes it a little more usable, is collecting the data as a variable, because then you could use it for other stuff. For example, you can collect data, numeric information, and do math and stuff like that. You could make calculators and tip calculators, and we do things where we do hex to RGB and RGB to hex converters. There's things where we can make running pace, where you can put in your run over a certain amount of miles and figure out your pace per mile and stuff like that. All kinds of things you could do with math and all kinds of things. So we're just using data right now, so this isn't quite as efficient, but we're going to start off using that. And the reason we're starting off with this is because the input function actually treats all the data as a string, even if you put in a number. So that's kind of something you have to think about if you're going to be doing any math later, that it treats all the input as a string, no matter what you put in. So if you ask your age and you put in 50 or something, it's going to treat it as a string. And one thing just to point out, I don't think I did this yet, but remember, this is a string. And you can't do any math with this. If you multiplied this 5 times, you would get 50, 50, 50, 50, 50. The only time that that's not a string is when you take away the quotes. Now it's actually a number and it shows up in blue. So we're going to get to that later, but I just want to point that out, that even though it looks like a number, if you put quotes around it, that's actually a string. That's why this thing here, that's not a number, that's a string. Now I'm going to take everything out of here, so this doesn't really matter what we have here. We're going to use our input function, so I'm going to wipe all this out. We're still going to have a variable that equals whatever someone puts in. So I'm going to put input. What I'm going to put in here is a prompt. Now if you don't put anything in here, but we're going to put a prompt here, and we're just going to say, in quotes, we're going to say enter first name, so people know what to put in there. We're going to do enter first name. And I'll put a colon so they see where to put it. Sometimes I put a space in here so they put it. Now I'm going to put a quote here. Now let me do one thing real quick and I'll get back to this. I'm going to go back here and I'm just going to make a new file. I'm just going to call it input sample. You don't have to do this. And I'll make a new file here, and I just want to show that if we have something like, input, you could just type input and you can save it and you can run it, and it's actually going to prompt you for input. And there it is. And you could put input in here and hit enter, and then it just continues on in the interpreter. So nothing happens. Now you could put like name equals and then make a variable that equals input. Now nothing will happen here. Let's just say you want to print name. Let's print it out. So you're going to input your name, and then it's going to print it out. So I'll save this just to show this. So it's prompting me. Now the problem with prompting, I didn't put anything in here to prompt you, so you wouldn't know. I mean, if you looked at the console, you just see a little red rectangle, you wouldn't know. But if I put Rich, if I knew it was to put my name in here, I could click here and type Rich. It actually prompts me in the console with that little red thing. And then if I hit enter, it prints out my name. So this is my input, that's my output. Input, output. And I could even go in here and put a quote and put enter name to make it a string like that. And then you can, make it a little nicer by putting a colon. Sometimes I put a space so the prompt isn't right next to the colon. And now if I save it and I run it, it says enter name. And now that's a little more understandable what's happening. Now I can click in here and say Rich and then hit enter. And there it is, and it's outputting my name. So this is the input, and that's the output. You don't have to have anything in here, but it's hard to know what's going on. So we're holding the input as a variable and then printing out the variable. So that's what we're doing. I just want to point that out because it's hard to do it since we have all those variables in place in the other file that we're working on. That's a little more confusing. So I guess I can save this. And I'll go back to our exciting address file, and that's what we're doing here. So I'm just going to start copying these things and replacing these because we're not going to be using that data. That data is going to be whatever anybody puts in. I could leave this the same. I'm not going to change that. And now I'll change my prompts. This will be last. This will be street address. And we'll put enter city, enter state. Now, so they don't spell out the whole state, I can put 2-letter state, prompting them even more, leading them so they know to put in, NJ or PA or something like that instead of spelling it out. And that should make it into capital letters here and enter zip code. So we have all our prompts together now. And when we get the data from those prompts, it should fill in this other stuff here. So I'm going to save this and we'll see what happens, see if I missed anything. And it says enter first name. And I'm going to go with Mark. I'll put in a different name. And you have to click in here. And I'll put Stevens. And I live at 133 Main Street, and I have to hit enter. I live in Dover. I live in Dover, Delaware. Surprised you there. You thought I was going to put New Jersey. And then my zip is 12346. It's not the same one as Dover, New Jersey. It's 12346. All right, so after I do that, prompted me for all these inputs. Now that I'm done with the inputs, when I hit enter here, it should do all these printouts. And there's Mark Stevens. There's Mark Stevens again, and there's Mark Stevens. Now, I still have my stuff messed up here because I don't have the right spaces. Let's just see what's happening. I might want to put a print line in front of here. You know how we separated things with that extra print line? You could use those. I could just put one here and put one after our prompts here. You could always do that. That'll just separate it so that when it starts printing out the addresses. And one thing I could do here, remember when I was telling you in the previous exercise, I'm already getting one between this and this with that. And if I didn't want that, I could just go here and put a \n. And then moving down here, I don't know, I seem to have issues scrolling in here in Python anywhere. And so that's my first one. And this is my second one. And if I want a line break between these, and this is, I guess I'll give you the hint of what happened at the other one in case you didn't figure it out yourself. But don't watch it because I want you to do it yourself. But what I'm going to do here is just copy all these things in here and put them all in one line, city, state, zip. I'll put these in here. That wasn't that hard as a challenge. So that way I have a line break. I have first name, space, last name. Then I have a line break. Then I have street address, and then a line break, and then city, comma, space, state. So that should print everything out on 3 lines. So that should be the way your first exercise finished, or your first part finished in the first part of the video. And now everything should output here. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to move this up so I can see my console better. I can't figure out if there's a way to do it side by side. In Replit, we'll be able to have the console side by side. But I find this a little awkward here. So let's print it out again, and let's run it and see our output. So I'm going to put Alex, and it's Stevens. That's his brother. It's Mark's brother. And he lives somewhere else. He lives on 145 New Street. And here's a surprise. He lives in Bethlehem. And that's in PA, not Delaware or New Jersey. And 18018. I know the zip code there in Bethlehem, PA. So let's hit return. And there it is. Alex Stevens, New Street, Bethlehem, PA. They all look the same. The second 2 have commas. The one has the 3-line address, all with one print statement. So that's what I want. So that's your exercise, really. And on this part of the exercise, we just went over input. And we're going to be doing a lot more with input, but keep in mind that everything that comes out of here is a string. So once we start doing some math calculations with input, which we will do, we're going to make sure that we convert them to integers. We're going to have to do that. And there's a lot of things we could do here. We can validate stuff that comes in here. So if people put in a letter and it's supposed to be a number, all kinds of things we can do once we get to conditional statements and all that. So this is just kind of the start here. We're easing into this very slowly at the beginning. And I've been trying to record new videos and stuff, so we're not just using the ones from last spring and all. And I like the idea of using Python anywhere in the beginning, but we're going to be switching to Replit probably pretty soon. But it is really nice to get your exercises. It's very easy to go and click on your exercises. I just have to go down my list and see all of your counts. It's really easy to get to. It's easier than even Replit, because then I have to get all your links and stuff. So anyway, that's all you have to do for this exercise. Your finished product is going to have your input variables up here. Actually, I should just look at the output should look like that, but your code should look like this when you're done. You should have all these input variables because they're basically variables that represent input statements. And then you're going to have basically 3 outputs that really look the same, other than this one has a comma in there and this one has a comma. And this one does not, because we're using the comma method, which makes it hard to put a comma in because it puts an extra space in there. So that's all we're doing here. So we kind of combined a bunch of things. We learned about the new line character to break a line if we want to. We know that it's automatically in a print statement. So that's about it for exercise 3. We'll be moving on with hopefully some things a little more exciting than printing out addresses. But that's exercise 3. And when you're done, all that you have to do, if you remember, when you go into your coursework for CSE 121 and you're going to go to Unit 2, which I think I still will have this under Unit 2, even though I'm uploading it kind of late. If I move it to Unit 3, that's okay. I'll give you enough time to work on it. But what you'll do is you'll click on this, and you'll add a comment, and you'll just say, you could just do this, finished, and I'll just put Homo RCN. Even though I told you to put your username in just the first one, it's nice to see it, because I'll get used to it more and more, because there's, I guess, around 20 students in the class. So the more I see your username. So just say finished, Homo RCN, and then I go to look at it right away. So that's all you have to do. You don't have to put a link. You don't have to upload anything. Just say finished, and then put your username. Obviously, that's my username that I just did my exercise in. So that's all you have to do for that assignment. And then when I go to look at it, just so you know, I can go look at this, and I could go into, oh, address, let's see who did this. And nobody did it. And I'll show emulated students that to me, and I could say, oh, look, Richard Homa did it. And I could click on it, and there I see, oh, he's Homa RCN. I'll go look at his account. So that's what I do when I go to look at all your stuff, and then I'll be like, wow, he did an awesome job. He gets a 25. Anyway, that's the end of exercise 3. We'll see you again for exercise 4. Make sure you check out the errors video, where I go over some of the different types of errors as well.